Millionaire CEO came to the hospital to visit his ex and saw triplets who looked exactly like him. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you believe in second chances that arrive softly in fathers who come back when it matters most, and in the kind of love that grows even after years of silence, this one is for you. 3 little girls sat silently on a long bench, their identical pink coats zipped all the way to the neck, their feet not quite touching the linoleum floor. They weren't talking. They weren't playing. They sat perfectly still, like a painting someone had forgotten to finish. At first, Grant Whitmore didn't notice them. He was too focused on the buzzing in his phone, the call from Leah, his chief of staff, reminding him to be back in time for the investor call. He mumbled something about being quick, already regretting making the stop himself. He could have sent someone. He always sent someone. But something about the message from the hospital had tugged at him. Camille Reyes. That name had cracked something open the moment he saw it. According to the administrator, he was still listed as her emergency contact on some outdated records. She had collapsed. Autoimmune failure. In ICU. No known relatives. They just needed him to sign off on next of kin paperwork. That was what they said. So he came. Out of obligation, out of some strange mix of guilt and curiosity. But now he was standing here just feet from her hospital door, and those 3 girls were looking at him like they had been waiting. One of them, the girl sitting in the middle, tilted her head slightly and said, "Are you Mr. Whitmore?" Her voice was small but confident. The other 2 followed her gaze. He stopped walking. It wasn't just their faces. It was the eyes, the shape of the chin, the set of the mouth. He had seen those features before in the mirror. "Yes," he said slowly. "I'm Grant Whitmore. How do you—" Before he could finish, the girl on the right stood up and reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out a small square photograph and held it out. He took it, glancing down at the worn, bent edges. It was a photo of him, not one from a press event, not a headshot. This one was personal. He was sitting on a park bench laughing. Camille was beside him, leaning into his shoulder. Her hand rested on his chest like it had always belonged there. He stared at it. Where did you get this?" "Mama keeps it in a box under her bed," said the 3rd girl, the smallest of the 3 who had been silent until now. She stepped forward and pulled out a delicate silver watch from her pocket. She said, "This used to be yours." Grant reached for the watch, his fingers trembling. It was his, one he had lost years ago. A gift from Camille when they were still— what were they? Not quite a couple, not quite strangers. Whatever they had been, it ended without explanation. She had disappeared without a goodbye. No forwarding address. No closure. He had searched, but only half-heartedly, and eventually he convinced himself that she had simply moved on. But now 3 little girls were standing in front of him, offering pieces of a past he had tried to forget. The girl in the center cleared her throat. "Mama said you used to carry that watch every day. She said you forgot a lot of things, but not that." "What are your names?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "I'm Esme," the middle one said. "That's Talia." She pointed to the girl with the photograph. "And June?" She nodded toward the smallest girl still holding the watch. "Are you—" He started to ask, but his throat closed up. The question felt enormous. It hung between them like thunderclouds. Esme answered anyway. She said, "We belong to you." That's what she always said, even when you didn't know us yet. The hallway spun slightly, and Grant had to put a hand on the wall to steady himself. He stared at the photo again. It wasn't possible, and yet every line of their faces said otherwise. Camille had never told him, never written, never reached out, and now these girls' triplets were just sitting there like they'd always been a part of his story. He turned toward the door marked Reyes ICU. The handle was cold under his fingers. For a moment he stood frozen, unsure if opening the door would shatter him or save him. He glanced back. The girls hadn't moved. June clutched the watch like it was a secret. Talia stared at him like she was trying to read his mind. Esme sat still, her small hands folded in her lap. He opened the door. The lights inside were dim. Machines beeped softly. Camille lay in the bed, pale and thinner than he remembered, her skin nearly translucent against the stark hospital linens. Her eyes were closed. For a moment he thought she might be asleep, but then they fluttered open slowly like a curtain lifting after a long intermission. "Grant," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible but unmistakable. "You came." He stepped closer, unsure what to say. "Camille, why didn't you tell me?" She blinked, and tears welled in the corners of her eyes. "Because I didn't think you'd want to know. And then I wasn't sure you'd believe me." "3 girls," he said softly. "Triplets. They look exactly like me." "They are yours," she said, her voice cracking. "There's no doubt. I never wanted to keep them from you. I was scared. After everything that happened." "What happened?" he asked, his voice tightening. "Why did you disappear?" Camille closed her eyes for a moment as if the memories were too heavy. "There were things going on at your company. Things I found out. A financial trail that led to someone on the board. Embezzlement. And something darker. I tried to tell you, but someone must have intercepted the email. The next day I was threatened, told to walk away or there would be consequences. For me, for you, for anyone I cared about." Grant felt the blood drain from his face. "You thought I was part of it." "No," she said quickly. "I thought you were too close to see it. I thought if I left it would protect you. And then I found out I was pregnant. I couldn't go back. I didn't want to put them in danger." He sat down in the chair beside her bed, his heart hammering. "And now I got sick. I made peace with it. But I wanted them to know who you were. So I told them about you. Every day. I showed them that photo. Gave them that watch. Told them about the man who once made me laugh in the middle of the worst week of my life." Grant swallowed hard. "You should have told me." "I could have." "I know," she interrupted gently. "But I didn't, and I can't undo it now. All I can do is ask you to be there, if something happens to me." He leaned forward and took her hand, surprised by how fragile it felt. "I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes closed again, this time from exhaustion. "They're good girls. Curious. Brave. They know you even if you don't know them yet." He nodded, his throat too tight for words. He sat there a while longer, holding her hand, listening to the soft rhythm of the machines. Outside the window, the sky was turning a soft gray. When he finally stood and stepped out into the hallway, the triplets were still there. Esme looked up first. "Is she okay?" He nodded. "She's resting. But yes, she's okay." "Are you mad at her?" Talia asked. "No," he said after a pause. "I'm not mad, just wishing I had known sooner." June walked up to him and held out the watch again. "You forgot this," she said, "but I kept it safe." He took it from her and knelt down to their level. "I think I have a lot to learn. About you. About all of this." Esme's expression softened. "We can teach you." And somehow in that moment the impossible felt possible. He was no longer just the man who built an empire out of steel and silence. He was something else now, something fragile, something unfinished. A father. Grant Whitmore had walked into that hospital thinking it would take 15 minutes of polite paperwork and a few awkward memories. He had expected a pale, half-forgotten chapter of his past to briefly surface before sinking back under the waves of his busy life. He had not expected 3 identical faces that bore his eyes, or a watch he had thought long lost, or a photograph that proved he had once smiled like a man who wasn't made entirely of marble. Now, as he sat across from the triplets in the hospital cafeteria, nothing in his life made sense in the way it had just yesterday. The table was too small for 4 people, and the chairs wobbled slightly, but none of the girls seemed to mind. They sat with their juice boxes and apple slices as if this were the most natural thing in the world, like this man they had never truly met was someone they had always known. Esme sat upright, feet dangling, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. She observed everything with calm interest, like she was cataloging him for a research paper. Talia, more animated, had a sparkle in her eyes that reminded Grant uncomfortably of himself when he used to believe in charm before control. And June, the quietest, had her small sketchbook open and was drawing something with a short, chewed-up pencil. Grant took a sip of the bitter coffee the vending machine had dispensed and cleared his throat. So he said, and instantly regretted how flat his voice sounded, "Tell me something about yourselves. Anything." Talia grinned. Esme knows everything about volcanoes. Not everything, Esme corrected without looking at her. Just the important stuff. Like Mount Tambora caused the year without a summer. That's a lot, Grant said slowly. Where did you learn that? Books, Esme said. And the internet. Sometimes Mama's phone when it worked. Sometimes the library. Talia leaned forward. I can do cartwheels. Wanna see? Not here, Esme snapped. You'll knock over the trash cans again. Talia sat back with a sheepish shrug. Fine. But later. And June, Grant asked gently, What do you like? June didn't answer at first. She looked up from her drawing and tilted the notebook toward him. It was a sketch of the hospital cafeteria, the ceiling tiles, the chairs, the juice boxes, and himself, right down to the crease between his eyebrows. He stared at it for a moment, then said quietly, That's very good. June nodded, satisfied, and went back to shading in one of the juice boxes. Grant felt like the ground under him was not quite steady, as if everything he thought he knew had been rearranged while he wasn't paying attention. They had personalities, histories, skills, preference. They were not blank pages. They were entire chapters that had been written without him. Do you want to know what Mama says about you? Talia asked suddenly. He hesitated. Yes, I do. She says you used to carry a little notebook too, but not for drawing, for writing ideas. She says you were always thinking of things to fix. Grant blinked. That was true. He had. It was something he hadn't thought about in years. His father had given him that habit: solve problems before they grew roots. She also says, Esme added, that you were too brave for your own good sometimes, that you didn't always see the danger coming until it was too late. She said that Grant asked, trying to keep his voice from cracking. A few times, Esme said. Usually when she thought we were asleep. She talks about you a lot, Talia said, even if it makes her sad. We weren't supposed to tell you that. Grant nodded slowly. There was so much he had missed. He had missed their first words, first steps, first birthdays. He didn't know what songs helped them fall asleep or which stuffed animals were essential for bedtime. And still they spoke to him like he was someone important. Not a stranger, something else, something closer. I don't really know what I'm doing, he admitted. Not with this, not with any of it. But I want to try. Mama said trying counts. June whispered without looking up. Even when it's hard. She's right, he said. She usually is. They sat together like that for a long time. No more questions, no expectations. Just four people learning how to share space in a world that had changed overnight. When a nurse came to tell them that Camille was stable but needed rest, Grant stood and offered the girls his hand. All three took it. They walked through the hallway like a little constellation. Grant didn't know what came next, but he knew one thing clearly: he wasn't walking away. Back in his car, he sat for a long time before calling Leah. His assistant answered on the first ring. You're late for the board briefing, she said immediately. Push it, he said. All of it. Cancel everything today and tomorrow. Cancel everything, she repeated, stunned. Yes. And I'll need you to find a short-term rental near Ridgewood Hospital. 3 bedrooms. Quiet neighborhood. Kid-friendly if possible. There was a long pause on the other end. You met them, didn't you? I did. And they're mine, he said simply. All 3. And Camille. She needs help. We all do. Leah exhaled slowly. All right, I'll handle it. Thank you. Grant. Yes. I've worked for you a long time, but this is the first time you've ever sounded like a real person. It suits you. He almost smiled. Almost. Just find the place. I'll text you the details. He hung up and started the engine. His mind was already racing. He didn't know how to be a father, but he knew how to build systems, routines, support structures. He could figure out the rest. He had to. The next morning he returned to the hospital with fresh clothes for the girls and Camille's favorite tea from a cafe she used to love. He didn't know if she could drink it, but it felt like something that might reach her. He found the girls in the hospital playroom. Talia was building a fortress out of foam blocks. Esme was reading a medical pamphlet. June was drawing again, this time a picture of 5 figures holding hands. The 5th figure was taller. It wore a tie. "That one's you," she said when she saw him looking. "I thought maybe it could be true." "I hope it is," he said quietly, "and I'm going to try every day to make sure it stays true." When he entered Camille's room, she was sitting up slightly, her eyes clearer. "You came back," she said. "I told you I would. I wasn't sure if you meant it. I mean it." She looked at him for a long time, and then her eyes softened. "They like you. Already. I'm not sure I deserve that. It's not about deserving, it's about showing up." He reached into the bag and pulled out the tea. "It might be too soon, but I remembered you loved it." She took the cup, her hand brushing his. "Thank you. What do we do now?" he asked. "We breathe," she said. "We let them see us together. We let them feel safe. And after that," she smiled faintly, "then we begin." Grant stood at the window and looked out over the city. Yesterday, it had all belonged to him. The buildings, the power, the silence. But none of it had ever really been his. Not like this. Not like them. And for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to build something that mattered. Something that could not be measured in profits or power. Something made of trust and time and the kind of love that waited patiently in the shape of 3 small girls who already knew his name. Just a short moment before we continue. Please subscribe if this story moved you. Your support truly keeps the lights on for us. Now let's return to the story. Grant Whitmore had once believed he understood the weight of responsibility. He had built empires on the backs of contracts, led rooms full of powerful men with nothing but silence and precision, and made decisions that shifted markets. But nothing he had ever done in a boardroom prepared him for the quiet pressure of holding 3 toothbrushes in one hand while trying to remember which cartoon-themed one belonged to which daughter. It was just past 6 in the evening, and he stood inside the bathroom of a modest 2-story rental house nestled on a quiet street not far from the hospital. The place smelled like fresh paint and vanilla-scented cleaner. Leah had found it within a few hours, fully furnished and stocked with everything 3 little girls might need, down to the bunny-shaped nightlights in each bedroom. Grant still hadn't figured out how she had managed it, but he had long ago stopped questioning her efficiency. Esme stood by the sink, arms folded, watching him like a quality control inspector. "That one's mine," she said, pointing to the purple toothbrush with the sparkles. "June has the blue one. Talia's is the one with the dinosaur." "Obviously." "Right," Grant said, feeling mildly ridiculous. He handed the purple brush to Esme, then crouched down to help June, who had already stuffed half a tube of toothpaste onto her brush and was eyeing it like it might escape. "You only need a little, not the whole tube," he said gently. June blinked at him wide-eyed, but didn't argue. She wiped off some of the excess with her finger and gave him a shy nod. Talia danced into the bathroom wearing mismatched socks and holding a plastic shark. "Do sharks brush their teeth?" she asked no one in particular. "Probably not with mint," Grant muttered under his breath, helping June rinse her brush. "I think they just lose teeth and grow new ones," Esme said. "Like dinosaurs." "Dinosaurs didn't brush either," Talia said, pleased. "So maybe we don't need to." "Nice try," Esme said. "But Mama says hygiene is non-negotiable." Grant handed her a towel and she dried her hands like a surgeon prepping for the OR. He looked around the bathroom, realizing that despite its simplicity, the space already felt alive. There were hair ties on the counter, toothpaste smeared near the mirror, and a line of bath toys on the edge of the tub. This was not his world, but it was quickly becoming one he couldn't imagine without. After teeth were brushed and pajamas had been chosen, Esme picked flannel with stars, June chose one with watercolor flowers, and Talia insisted on wearing a superhero cape over hers. Grant herded them into the living room. The small bookshelf he had requested now held a mix of library books and new purchases. He let them choose their bedtime story. June pointed to a worn copy of a classic fairy tale collection. "That one has the princess who saves herself," she said quietly. "I like her." "Good choice," Grant said, settling onto the couch. The girls piled around him, Esme leaning against his shoulder, Talia perched on the armrest like a cat, and June curling up beside his leg with her sketchbook open, doodling as he read. He had never read aloud to anyone before. At first his voice came out stiff and overly formal, like he was giving a keynote speech, but as the girls giggled or gasped at different parts, something inside him shifted. He relaxed into the rhythm of the words, letting the story carry them all. By the time he reached the final sentence, all three girls were quiet. June had fallen asleep, her sketchbook still open to a half-drawn picture of the story's brave princess. Esme was blinking slowly, clearly trying to stay awake. Talia yawned dramatically. "You're not bad at that," she said. "You didn't do the voices, but you didn't mess up the long words either." "High praise," Grant said, standing carefully and lifting June into his arms. "Come on, bedtime." He tucked each girl in separately. Esme had a specific request: 3 pats on the blanket, a kiss on the forehead, and the nightlight set to purple. Talia wanted her cape folded and placed at the foot of the bed, and a reminder that dreams were just stories you got to control. June stirred when he placed her in bed but didn't wake. She rolled onto her side and murmured something that sounded like his name. When he turned off the lights and stepped into the hallway, the quiet felt full, not empty. He went downstairs and sat in the small kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water he didn't drink. Camille's file lay open on the table. The hospital had sent over a copy of her medical report. Her condition was serious but stable. The diagnosis was an advanced autoimmune disorder made worse by stress, malnutrition, and years of delayed treatment. Grant clenched his jaw. She had suffered in silence, carrying not just her own burden, but the lives of 3 children without once reaching out. He wasn't sure if he should be furious or in awe. Maybe both. Leah arrived the next morning with a bag full of groceries and a folder of legal paperwork. She moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, setting things in cabinets, checking expiration dates, wiping down countertops. "You don't have to do all that," Grant said. "I know," she replied, placing cereal boxes in the pantry. "But if I don't, the girls will end up eating nothing but crackers and imagination. They already tried that," he muttered. Talia packed her own lunch yesterday. It was a single banana and 3 paper clips. Leah paused, then raised an eyebrow. Paper clips. She said they were for trading. Of course. She handed him the folder. "These are the documents to begin temporary guardianship. Camille still has full legal custody, but with her health uncertain, this allows you to act in emergency situations. Sign here, here, and here." He signed without hesitation. Leah studied him for a moment. "You're really in this, aren't you?" "I'm not leaving," he said. "I already lost 7 years. I won't lose another day. Then you'll need help. A nanny, a schedule, probably a therapist. And Grant, the media is going to find out eventually." He looked up sharply. "What do you mean you're a public figure?" 3 daughters appearing out of nowhere, reporters will sniff it out, especially if someone leaks it. He stared at her. "You think someone will? Maybe not now, but eventually. Especially if someone wants to cause trouble." He thought of the people who had silenced Camille all those years ago, the ones she had feared enough to disappear. They wouldn't want her resurfacing now, especially not with living proof of what she had uncovered. "Then we stay quiet," he said. "For now." The girls adjusted faster than he expected. Within days, they had claimed the house as their own. Talia set up a kingdom of pillows in the living room and declared herself queen. Esme created a rotating schedule for dishwashing and designated herself Minister of Logic. June stuck to her sketchbook, but Grant noticed that her drawings now included him more often. Not always front and center, but present walking beside them, sitting on a bench carrying an umbrella over all three girls in a rainstorm. He began to learn their rhythms. Esme liked her cereal with exactly 5 strawberries. Talia refused to wear matching socks. June didn't like loud noises and needed time to process before answering questions. They taught him how to be their father, without knowing that was what they were doing. And every night when the house fell quiet, Grant would sit in the kitchen with Camille's medical file, reading and rereading, trying to understand how he had missed so much. One afternoon, as he waited in the hospital lobby before visiting Camille, a tall man in a gray suit approached him. The man's smile was too polished, his eyes too sharp. "Mr. Whitmore?" "Yes." "I'm Dr. Alan Monroe, hospital administrator." Grant stood. "You're the one who approved Camille's emergency admission." "Indeed. I also reviewed her case personally. You understand, of course, that the matter of the children's guardianship is sensitive." "It's being handled," Grant said. "I'm aware. However, should Camille's condition worsen, the hospital has a duty to report any uncertainties to child services. You're not yet listed on the birth certificates." "We're working on it," Grant said coldly. "Good, because if anything appears irregular, custody decisions could move quickly. It would be a shame if those girls were placed into temporary care due to a paperwork delay." Grant's fists clenched at his sides. "That won't happen." Dr. Monroe smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I certainly hope not. For their sake." He walked away without another word. Grant stood in the lobby for a long time after that, his jaw tight. He recognized a veiled threat when he heard one. He had spent years in rooms full of men who smiled like that. He pulled out his phone and called Leah. "Get me everything you can on Dr. Alan Monroe, and find out who exactly reported Camille missing 8 years ago. I think someone wants those girls out of her hands. And now mine." "I'm on it," Leah said. And Grant, "Yes, be careful. If someone is pulling strings, this won't stay quiet for long." He hung up and looked toward the ICU hallway. He had stepped into this thinking he could fix things. But now he knew this wasn't just about the past. It was about protecting the future. And he would not lose his daughters. Not again. Not to anyone. The morning light filtered in through the sheer curtains of the rental house, spilling over the breakfast table where the girls sat munching cereal and bickering over whose turn it was to feed the imaginary dragon that apparently lived in the hallway closet. Grant Whitmore poured himself a cup of coffee, watching them with a mixture of awe and exhaustion. Esme was already dressed in her school uniform, collar buttoned, and socks pulled up to regulation height. She had taken to laying out everyone's clothes the night before, including her own backup socks in case Talia decided hers were too itchy. June sat quietly stirring her cereal in small, slow circles, glancing occasionally at her sister's squabble while sketching tiny dragons in the margin of her homework. Talia, in contrast, had one sock on jelly smeared across her cheek and was wearing a tiara over her tangled curls like she was ready to attend both a coronation and a food fight. "The dragon likes waffles," she declared. "He told me. He doesn't like toast. Toast makes him sneeze fire." "Dragons don't eat toast," Esme said without looking up from her book. "They eat goats. And knights." "Not this one," Talia replied. "He's allergic to goat. Also, knights are too crunchy." Grant resisted the urge to laugh and instead checked the time. "Shoes on in 5 minutes," he said. "Esme, can you check June's backpack? She forgot her lunch yesterday." "I reminded her 3 times," Esme muttered, sliding off her chair. "June, did you remember your journal?" June nodded and held it up. She had started writing in it every evening, filling it with half-thoughts and shadowy illustrations of her dreams. Grant made a mental note to get her a second one soon. That night he had dreamed of the sketch June had drawn of their family, him, the 3 girls, and Camille standing under a tree with a swing. He had found himself returning to that image again and again. At precisely 8:30, Grant loaded the girls into the back of his sleek black sedan, which had recently acquired a trail of sticker residue along the inside window thanks to Talia's sticker obsession. He did not complain. He had replaced million-dollar negotiations with morning drop-offs, and somehow the latter carried more weight. "Don't forget Esme's recital permission slip," Talia sang as they pulled up to the school curb. And June needs new markers. The ones she has smell funny. They smell like licorice, June whispered. That's not funny, that's dangerous. Esme handed him a folded paper. It's all on the list. I color-coded it. Of course you did, Grant said, taking it with a nod. Have a good day. All of you. Talia kissed his cheek without warning. June offered a quiet wave, and Esme gave him a nod that could have passed as a boardroom acknowledgement. He watched them walk into the school until they disappeared behind the blue doors. That afternoon, Grant returned to the hospital. Camille was sitting upright, her eyes brighter, her face slowly regaining the glow he remembered. She looked better. Not whole, but more present. You've got that expression, she said when he walked in. What expression? The one you get when you're about to solve something. Usually a billion-dollar problem. This one's more personal, he said, taking the seat beside her. He showed her a file. Leah had delivered it that morning, filled with everything she had uncovered about Dr. Alan Monroe. Camille's eyes scanned the pages slowly. He's connected to them, isn't he? More than that, Grant said. He was on the periphery of the board when you worked for me. Back then, he was just a compliance consultant. But his name is on the trail you found, the shell companies, the fake grant money. Camille let out a slow breath. So, he was one of them. Or working for them. Either way, he wants you out of the picture. And the girls. He's trying to push through a custody review. He called Child Services anonymously 3 days ago, citing your illness and a lack of legal guardianship. That's fast. Too fast, Grant said. He's scared. Camille leaned back into her pillow. We need to protect them, no matter what happens to me. You're not going anywhere, he said, reaching for her hand. We're not losing anyone this time. She closed her eyes for a long moment, then opened them slowly. Do they ask about me? All the time, he said. Esme wants to bring you her volcano science project. Talia is convinced you have magic powers and wants to know if you can teach her to speak to animals. June draws you every day. Her sketchbook is full of you. It's like she's keeping you close even from far away. Camille's lips trembled, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. Later that evening, as Grant was tucking the girls into bed, the doorbell rang. He descended the stairs and opened the front door to find a woman standing there in a beige trench coat with a government-issued badge clipped to her collar. Mr. Whitmore. Yes. My name is Regina Clary. I'm with Child Services. I received a referral regarding 3 minors in your care. May I come in? Grant stepped aside, but every cell in his body was alert. You'll find the girls upstairs getting ready for bed. This isn't a good time for interviews. I understand, she said, but I need to verify their living conditions. May I ask who referred this case? It came through anonymous tips citing an unverified guardianship and potential instability. Instability, Grant repeated. I see. He led her through the downstairs area, showing the clean living room, the organized kitchen, the dining table where the girls had drawn crayon rainbows earlier that day. Regina took notes but offered no expression. You understand, she said at last, that until we have legal documentation confirming your guardianship, we must monitor the environment closely. This is not an accusation. It's protocol. I understand, he said tightly, but I won't allow them to be removed from this house. That's not up to you, she replied. Unless the documentation is filed by end of week, we will need to prepare a hearing. The moment she left, Grant called Leah. It's happening, he said. They've started the process. We'll fast-track the guardianship papers. I'll have the legal team file an emergency petition, and I'll call in a favor with a judge who owes me more than one. Thank you. Grant, Leah added, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. You're doing everything right. You didn't choose this chaos, but you're standing in it. That's what matters. He didn't sleep much that night. Instead, he paced the hallway outside the girls' rooms, listening to their even breathing. He checked the windows, the locks, every corner of the house. At dawn, he sat in the kitchen, Camille's file spread before him, coffee going cold beside his untouched toast. He read her words again, the ones she had written in a medical release form 2 months earlier. If anything happens to me, contact Grant Whitmore. He is the only person I trust to care for my daughters." That morning after breakfast, he took the girls on a surprise visit. They stepped into the hospital room just as Camille was trying to prop herself up against the pillows. Esme rushed to her side, producing her volcano project like a scientist unveiling a breakthrough. Talia climbed onto the edge of the bed and immediately began listing every magical creature she had read about that week. June simply walked over, curled up beside Camille, and laid her head on her mother's arm. Camille kissed the top of her head and closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of her daughters. Grant stood at the foot of the bed watching them. The room, despite its machines and wires and sterile scent, felt warm, like a home in the making. He had once been a man who measured success in numbers and risk ratios, but now he knew what real value was. It was measured in quiet hugs and worn sketchbooks, in the way June said his name when she was half asleep, in Camille's smile when she looked at the life she had built, even when she had built it in fear and silence. Grant stepped closer, placing a hand on the edge of the bed. "I spoke with our lawyer," he said quietly. "The papers will be filed by tomorrow. You'll have full legal protection, and so will they." Camille looked up at him, her eyes wet. "Thank you. No more running," he said. "Not from this, not from them, not from us." She nodded. No more running. And in that room, surrounded by all that they had nearly lost, something new was being built. Not an empire, not a legacy, a family, imperfect, fragile, but real. And Grant knew without question he would fight for it with everything he had. Hold on for just a second. If this story touched you, please subscribe. Every subscription helps keep our stories alive. Let's continue. The next week unfolded like a rope being pulled tight from both ends. Every day brought small victories wrapped in delicate layers of anxiety. Grant Whitmore found himself immersed in a routine that resembled nothing of his former life. Instead of morning strategy meetings, he packed 3 lunchboxes while Esme grilled him on multiplication tables. Instead of conference calls with global partners, he tied Talia's shoelaces twice because she undid them to make them loopier. And instead of quarterly earnings reports, he reviewed Camille's bloodwork results with a quiet hope he did not dare name. Camille was improving, slowly but noticeably. She had color in her cheeks again, and enough energy to scold Talia for hiding gummy bears in the hospital room mini-fridge. Her doctor said the stress reduction and consistent care were making a difference, but she still faced months of recovery. Her immune system, weakened by years of neglect, could not afford any sudden complications. Grant kept his promises. He filed the guardianship paperwork with Leah's help, provided every record requested by Child Services, and made himself available for every unannounced drop-in. He had even taken a temporary leave of absence from Whitmore Holdings, appointing an interim CEO to hold things together. The news made headlines. The reclusive billionaire stepping away for personal reasons sparked rumors ranging from medical emergencies to hostile takeovers. But Grant didn't care. The only thing he cared about was sitting at a small wooden table each evening, while June sketched dragons beside her spaghetti. Talia attempted to balance grapes on her nose, and Esme quizzed him on planetary distances, as if she were preparing for an interstellar debate. One afternoon, while the girls were at school, and Camille was resting, Grant sat with Leah in the rental's tiny kitchen going over documents. "There's something else you need to see," Leah said, sliding a manila folder across the table. "I pulled Camille's sealed employment records from the archive, just in case we need to prove her connection to Whitmore Holdings in court. And I found this." Grant opened the folder. Inside was a photocopy of an email. The address was old, predating their internal system upgrade, but unmistakably Camille's. The subject line was flagged, "Confidential Emergency." "This is the email she said she sent," Grant murmured. "She tried to tell me." "She did," Leah said. "But look at the timestamp. It was sent at 11:32 at night. The next morning your inbox was flagged as compromised. It was wiped." Grant's jaw clenched. So someone inside knew. They deleted it. Likely someone with access to both her account and yours. Someone protecting themselves, Alan Monroe, Grant said under his breath. Or someone he worked with. It's always been about keeping her quiet. And now that she's back with children linked to me by blood, they're scared. And dangerous, Leah added. We should anticipate more than just legal pressure. Then we get ahead of it. I want our lawyers on full alert. I want a record of every visit, every threat, every attempt to discredit her. Leah nodded. Already started. Grant looked down at the printed email again, the bold subject line staring up at him like a ghost. She tried to protect me, and I failed to protect her. You didn't know, Leah said. But you know now. And you're here. That evening, after picking up the girls from school, Grant took them to the park just down the road from the house. It was small and quiet, with a creaky swing set and a sandbox shaped like a turtle. June went straight for the swings. Esme took out a book and climbed the low wall near the flower beds. Talia ran full speed to the merry-go-round and spun herself dizzy. Grant sat on the bench nearby, watching them, every nerve still wired with tension. But here, under the pale gold of the setting sun, there was peace. June eventually wandered over and climbed onto the bench beside him, her sketchbook in hand. "Do you like stars?" she asked, seemingly out of nowhere. "I do," he replied. "Why?" "Because they're always there, even when you can't see them." He looked at her, surprised by the quiet wisdom in her voice. "That's true. Mama says that about people, too. That sometimes they go away, but that doesn't mean they stop being part of your sky." He felt his throat tighten. "She's a smart woman." "She says you're part of her sky," June whispered, even when she was scared. Grant placed a hand on her back. "I was scared too. But not anymore." "Good," she said, and opened her sketchbook. "Because this one is all of us." He looked down. She had drawn 5 figures holding hands beneath a large tree filled with stars instead of leaves. He was in the center, the girls on either side and Camille resting in a chair nearby with a book in her lap. At the base of the tree, the words were written in tiny, careful letters, "Home grows where love stays." He blinked quickly and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "That's perfect." The next day, as the girls returned to school and Grant visited Camille, another letter arrived. This one was from the Department of Family Services. It was a formal notice of an expedited custody hearing requested by an outside party concerned about the stability of the children's current living situation. The petitioner's name was redacted for privacy. But Grant didn't need the name. He already knew. "Monroe's making his move," he told Camille. She sat up slowly, her face pale but sharp. "When next week?" "Tuesday morning." "Do we have everything?" "Not everything, but enough. Testimony, medical records, your notarized letter naming me, and now the email you sent, the one they erased. That's our proof." Camille looked at him steadily. "They'll try to rattle you. They can try." She reached for his hand. "You're different now, not just because of them. Because of this. You found something you didn't know you were missing." He nodded, unsure how to respond. She was right. The man he had been before, cold, efficient, untouchable, had no place in this version of his life. The next few days passed in quiet anticipation. The girls were too perceptive not to sense something looming. Esme began organizing their routines with extra care, almost as if preparing for a test. Talia asked more questions than usual, mostly about whether courts had snacks. June drew a picture of a courtroom with everyone holding hands, even the judge. When the morning of the hearing arrived, Grant dressed carefully in a navy suit. Not the sharpest one in his closet, but the one Camille had once told him made him look less like a statue and more like someone who listened. He brought the girls to a friend's house, a quiet place with a garden and a golden retriever named Waffles, who Talia had immediately adopted as her emotional support animal. Camille met him at the courthouse. She was still weak, but determined. When the hearing began, the courtroom was quiet, almost disappointingly plain for how momentous the moment felt. The judge was a woman in her 60s, with sharp eyes and a softer voice. Monroe's representative made their case quickly, too quickly, as if expecting an easy win. They argued instability, medical uncertainty, and lack of formal parental rights. Grant stood next. His voice was calm, steady, but every word carried weight. "I did not know about these children until a few weeks ago. That was not my choice. But since the moment I did, I have been there. Every morning, every night. I left my company to be present. I filed for guardianship. I adjusted my life in every way that matters. The judge asked him why he believed he could give them what they needed. Grant paused, then said, "Because I show up. Because I listen. Because they believe in me. And I won't betray that." Camille's voice came next. Though hoarse, it rang through the room like truth. She explained everything why she left, what she discovered why she stayed hidden. She spoke of fear and love, and 3 girls who had never known the protection of a father until now. When she finished, the room was silent. The judge reviewed the evidence for several long minutes. Then she ruled, full joint custody to Camille Reyes and Grant Whitmore. Oversight only if medical conditions worsened. No action to be taken without further hearing. And Monroe's petition for third-party review was denied, citing lack of standing and potential conflict of interest. As they exited the courtroom, Camille turned to Grant, eyes wet with relief. "We did it. We did," he said. "But more importantly, they're safe." That evening, as the girls returned home and burst through the door with stories about waffles and cookies and a worm Esme had found in the garden, Grant stood in the doorway and watched them. Camille sat on the couch, her blanket draped over her legs, smiling softly as June climbed up beside her and handed her a new drawing one with a crown made of stars. They had survived the storm. But more than that, they had begun again. This time with no more silence, no more secrets, only truth, and the choice to stay. The days that followed the courtroom victory settled into something Grant Whitmore had never quite experienced before. Not peace exactly, and not simplicity. He was still learning how to braid hair without making it too tight, still forgetting which snack June refused to eat on Wednesdays, and which day Talia's backpack had to include her sketchy hand-drawn map of the school's secret dragon tunnels. But it was something else. Something steady. A quiet rhythm building where chaos used to live. And inside that rhythm he began to breathe differently. The rental house was still modest, but the corners had changed. The fridge had taken on a life of its own, covered in crooked magnets, school art projects, and a rotating list of important rules handwritten by Esme in marker. Number 1, no dragons allowed in the microwave. Number 2, shoes go by the door unless you are pretending to be a knight. Number 3, if someone cries, we do not pretend we do not hear it. We stop. We help. We stay. Grant had not written that last rule. Esme had come up with it on her own after he stayed up until nearly midnight, comforting Talia after a nightmare about a sea monster eating her sandwich at lunch. That same night, June had crawled out of bed, handed him her sketchbook, and asked him to draw something. "I'm not very good at drawing," he had said, glancing at the blank page. "But you're good at staying," she had whispered. So he drew a clumsy house with a wonky roof and 3 small windows, one for each of them. The next morning it was taped beside the fridge list and nobody laughed at it. Not even Esme. Camille's health continued to improve, though the doctors warned them to expect setbacks. Her immune system, while no longer in crisis, would need time and patience. Grant hired a home care nurse named Vanessa, a calm and cheerful woman who managed to make vegetable soup taste like a small miracle. Camille began spending more hours at the house first, in short visits, then in full afternoons curled up with June on the couch or helping Esme with her science experiments. One evening, as Talia dramatically recited a poem she had written about marshmallows and betrayal, Camille looked across the living room and caught Grant's eye. She smiled, and he saw it again, that expression that used to undo him, back when he didn't know what to do with softness. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, they sat in the quiet living room. Camille was wrapped in a blanket with a tea mug resting on her knee. Grant sat opposite her, holding a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. "They're changing you," she said softly. "I didn't think I could change," he replied. "Not like this. Not so fast." "Not fast," she said, shaking her head. "You were always like this. It just got buried under everything else. You saw it a long time ago. That's why it hurt so much to leave. I knew what you could be. And I thought maybe Maybe I wasn't allowed to stay and see it happen. He looked down at his cup. You were protecting me, but you protected them too, even when it meant you had to disappear. I was angry for a long time, she said. At you, at myself, at the people who made it feel like there were no good choices left. But now I think maybe we were both just trying to survive. And somehow we did. We did, he echoed. And now we get to build something. Do you want that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Not just for them, but with me he met her gaze. Yes, I want all of it. The bedtime chaos, the messy mornings, the tea-stained books and fridge rules. I want the hard parts too, because they come with you, and I'm not walking away again. She didn't say anything right away, but when she reached out and took his hand, he held it like a lifeline. A few days later, Grant took the girls on their first official outing as a family, not to the park or the library or the ice cream shop down the street, but somewhere different, somewhere that belonged to him. Whitmore Holdings stood like a monument in the center of the city, all glass and steel and quiet power. It had once been the only thing that mattered to him. Now it felt like something he wanted to share, not control. He brought the girls to the top floor where the executive conference room overlooked the skyline. They pressed their faces to the windows, gasping at how small everything looked below. Do people work here? Talia asked, her eyes wide. Lots of people, he said. And what do they do? Esme asked. Mostly they talk. Sometimes they argue. Hopefully they solve problems. Like we do at home, June asked. Sort of, he said, smiling. But with more spreadsheets. Boring, Talia declared. Can I run it instead? I want to make it a glitter store. I'll take that under advisement, he replied. Leah joined them a few minutes later, holding a folder and trying not to grin, as Talia offered her a handmade glitter business card that read, CEO of Magic. You're building quite the team, Leah said, watching them explore the office. The best one I've ever had, Grant said. She handed him the folder. Finalized paperwork. You're listed now as co-guardian with full medical consent and educational authority. The birth certificates have been updated. It's official. He took the folder, the weight of it sinking into his hands. Thank you. You did the hard part, she said. You stayed. That night, Camille cooked dinner at the house for the first time in years. The girls helped, which meant flour in the air noodles on the floor, and a mysterious green sauce that no one could quite explain. But the kitchen smelled like home. Afterward, they all sat on the living room floor playing a board game that June insisted on modifying, because the original rules were too stressful. Esme kept score with a chart that only she understood. Talia cheated twice and admitted it with dramatic flair. Camille laughed so hard she had to sit back down. Grant watched them all holding a cup of lukewarm tea and thought, this is what I missed. Not the milestones, not the photos, or the birthdays, but this, the ordinary moments, the soft magic of belonging. When the girls were finally asleep, sprawled in a tangle of blankets and stuffed animals, Grant stood in the hallway and stared at the quiet glow coming from under their doors. Camille joined him, leaning against the opposite wall. I used to wonder what kind of man you'd be as a father, she said. And now I don't have to wonder. It's still terrifying, he admitted. I don't always know what I'm doing. None of us do, she said. But you're doing it anyway. That's what matters. They saved me, he said quietly. I thought I was walking in to save them. But they're the ones who showed me what matters. She reached for his hand again. He took it. They stood there in silence, wrapped in the soft hum of nighttime. No boardroom, no courtrooms, no headlines. Just a hallway filled with light from 3 bedrooms. 3 daughters and a life they had all chosen together. Outside, the stars flickered behind the clouds. And for the first time in years, Grant felt like one of them, constant, present, and finally visible to the people who mattered most. A quick pause. Please subscribe if this story matters to you. It's your support that allows us to keep telling stories like this. Back to the story now. On the morning that changed everything again, the sky was clear, and the house was full of music. Not the kind that came from speakers, but the real kind. The noise of spoons tapping against bowls' socks, sliding across floors. Talia's off-key humming, Esme arguing with the toaster, and June drawing stars in the steam on the kitchen window. Grant Whitmore had learned to recognize this music. It was not chaotic to him anymore. It was alive. It was proof that love could be loud and unorganized and absolutely perfect in its own way. Camille stood at the stove in one of Grant's old sweatshirts, her hair pulled into a loose braid, and her eyes bright in a way that still caught him off guard sometimes. She flipped pancakes like it was something she had always done, even though it had only recently become a ritual again. Esme was making a list of everything they needed for their class project on ecosystems. Talia was trying to convince everyone that dragons counted as endangered species, and June was quietly writing something in the corner of her drawing pad, chewing the edge of her pencil with her usual thoughtful expression. Grant poured himself a cup of coffee and stood by the counter watching the scene unfold. It felt like something sacred, a picture no camera could truly capture. "Can you take the girls to school today?" Camille asked, handing him a plate of pancakes shaped like something between hearts and question marks. "I want to stop by the hospital for my blood work and then swing by the library to return June's books." "Of course," he said, setting the plate down and leaning in to kiss her forehead. "You okay?" "I'm good," she replied. "Tired, but good. I feel steady, like the ground stopped shifting. That's because we're standing on it together now." She smiled and squeezed his hand before turning back to the stove. The drive to school was full of questions about whether turtles dream and if glitter is a liquid or a solid. Grant answered what he could and promised to ask the internet for everything else. When they pulled up to the curb, Esme handed him a folded piece of paper. "Can you sign this? It's for the parent volunteer event on Friday. I told Miss Dana you were probably coming." "Parent volunteer," he echoed. "It's a science fair. They need people to help set up booths and pass out snacks. I already told June's teacher you like stars, and Talia said, you know how to make serious faces. You're perfect for it." "Well, I can't argue with that logic," Grant said, taking the paper. "Tell Miss Dana I'm in." Talia kissed his cheek and whispered, "Don't wear your boring suit. Wear the sweater that makes you look soft. The blue one. No, the gray one. It makes your eyes look like rain." He laughed and nodded. "Got it. Rain eyes it is." He watched them walk into the building, backpacks bouncing, arms linked like they were stormproof just by being together. Then he sat in the car for a moment longer than he meant to, staring at the dashboard like it might tell him what to do next. He did not expect the call that came just before noon. It was from Leah. Her voice was clipped and low, the tone she used when things were about to get complicated. "Grant, there's something you need to know." The press got a tip. About what he asked, though he already had a terrible guess. About the girls, and Camille, and you. Someone sent them photos, documents, probably from inside the hospital. I think it's Monroe trying to stir up doubt again now that he's lost the legal battle. Grant closed his eyes and took a slow breath. How bad is it? It hasn't hit the major networks yet. But gossip blogs are picking it up. Some have already posted headlines about secret children love affairs, corporate scandal. A few are trying to spin it into a story about you hiding them. "I never even knew they existed until a few weeks ago," he said sharply. "I know, and we'll release a statement clarifying that. But you need to be prepared. Reporters may start showing up. At the office, at the house, maybe even the school." Grant was already out the door, locking the house behind him. "Call the school and let them know. Increase security. I'm going to pick up the girls now." "I'll get ahead of this," Leah promised. "Just focus on your family." When he arrived at the school, the receptionist was already expecting him. Esme, Talia, and June were sitting in the office, confused but not afraid. Esme stood up first. "Is everything okay?" "We're fine," Grant said gently. "But I think it's best if we all go home early today. Some people are saying things they shouldn't, and I don't want you anywhere near that noise." "Did someone find out?" June asked. "About us?" "Yes," he said. "And they don't know the whole story. So they're guessing. And they're wrong." Talia frowned. "Will they say bad things about Mama?" "Maybe," he admitted. But we're going to tell the truth. Together. He brought them home through the back route, avoiding the corner where a small group of photographers had already begun to gather. Camille met them at the door. She had seen the stories. Leah had sent her screenshots. She did not panic. She did not cry. She simply reached for her daughters, hugged them close, and said, "We knew this day might come. But they don't get to decide who we are." "What do we do?" Grant asked. "We speak," she said. "Not to the press. Not to people looking for a headline. We speak to the ones who matter, the people who need to hear what real love looks like." That night, while the girls colored quietly in the living room, Camille and Grant sat at the kitchen table and wrote a letter. Not a statement for lawyers. Not a press release for damage control. A letter. Honest. Clear. Personal. It told the truth. About their past. About the silence. About the reappearance. About what they were building now together. It ended with a line Camille insisted on adding. "Family isn't something you announce. It's something you show up for. Every day. No matter what." Leah released the letter through Grant's personal channel. No branding, no spin, no damage control language, just words. Real ones. The internet reacted the way it always does. Some noise, some cruelty, some disbelief. But there was also kindness. Stories shared by others. Letters from people who had been in hiding. Parents who reunited with children. Children who forgave. The noise didn't disappear, but it softened. And the story became something else. Not a scandal. A revelation. At school, the girls were met with a few whispers, a few stares, but mostly hugs. Miss Dana handed Esme a stack of letters from classmates who had seen the news and wanted her to know they were glad she was staying. June came home with a bracelet that said, "You are magic in beads." Talia returned with a handful of drawings she had been given, stick figures of her with glitter capes and hearts that stretched across the paper. The science fair still happened that Friday. Grant showed up in the gray sweater. He helped set up folding tables, passed out fruit cups, and even answered questions about constellations for a group of second graders who thought he was some kind of astronaut. Esme won a ribbon for her volcano experiment. Talia got honorable mention for her glitter-based theory of lava creatures. June did not enter a project. Instead, she handed the judge a single sheet of paper. On it was a drawing. A house with a wonky roof, 5 figures standing out front and above it, in careful lettering, the words "always, no matter what." She did not win a prize, but she got something else. She got understanding. Afterward, the family went out for ice cream. Camille wore a sundress and laughed without holding back. Grant watched her watch the girls and thought about how quickly a life could be rewritten, not by denial, not by running, but by staying, choosing, living. That night, after the girls had fallen asleep and the house had gone quiet again, Grant stood in the hallway staring at the 3 doors, each slightly ajar. The glow of night lights spilled across the floor. He walked into the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and found Camille standing at the back door staring up at the stars. "They're asking Les," she said, "the girls, about whether we're staying." "Because they believe we are," he replied. She nodded. "So do I." "We're not just telling a story anymore," he said. "We're living it." She looked over at him. "And what do you think comes next?" He stepped forward, took her hand, and pulled her gently into his arms. "More," he said. "More days, more noise, more of this, as much of it as life will give us." And outside, above the little house filled with laughter and learning and second chances, the stars burned quiet and steady, just like always. The morning of the girl's 8th birthday arrived wrapped in soft sunlight and the quiet hush of a house that had for once slept through the night. Grant Whitmore stood in the kitchen wearing an apron that read, "Head Chef by request only, flipping pancakes shaped like stars," while humming a tune he couldn't name. The smell of cinnamon and warm maple drifted through the house, and just as he plated the final pancake, he heard the unmistakable sound of little feet thumping down the stairs in chaotic rhythm. Talia appeared first wearing a glitter crown and declaring the day a royal occasion. June followed behind, quieter but wide-eyed, holding her sketchbook and a pencil tucked behind one ear. Esme brought up the rear, hair neatly brushed, a clipboard in hand with a detailed list of birthday events and time slots for cake presents and what she had called spontaneous sister surprises. Grant greeted them with a bow and 3 plates of pancakes. "Happy birthday, queens of the realm," he said. "Breakfast is served." They giggled and climbed onto their usual stools at the table, eyes wide with anticipation. Camille entered a moment later, barefoot and glowing, her arms full of handmade birthday cards she had helped the girls create for each other the night before. Her steps were lighter these days, her eyes brighter. And even when the fatigue returned, even when the weakness tried to catch her off guard, she smiled through it. She leaned over and kissed each daughter on the forehead. "How does it feel to be 8?" she asked. "Like I've achieved legendary status," Talia said between bites. "I feel taller," Esme answered, adjusting her clipboard. "I dreamed I turned into a bird," June whispered, "so I think that means I'm very wise now." Grant poured orange juice into cups and glanced at Camille. "Do legendary birds eat their pancakes first, or open presents?" "Pancakes first," Camille said. "Presents after, and then the scavenger hunt." "You remembered the scavenger hunt?" Esme gasped. "Of course," Camille replied. "You put it on the schedule. It's laminated. I love this family." Talia sighed. "Even if no one here thinks dragons should be president." After breakfast, they moved into the living room where 3 small boxes sat under a handmade banner that read, "Happy Birthday, Brave Ones." Each box was tied with ribbon and had a name tag carefully written in June's handwriting. Esme opened hers first. Inside was a small silver necklace with a charm shaped like a telescope. Engraved on the back were the words, "You see what others miss." Her eyes widened, and for a moment she said nothing. Then she reached forward and hugged Grant tightly. "I didn't think you noticed that," she whispered. "I see everything now," he replied. Talia's box was next. Her necklace had a charm shaped like a flame, vibrant and swirling. On the back it read, "You bring the light." She clutched it like it was made of diamonds and launched herself into his arms. "I'm going to wear this forever," she said, "even when I'm famous." June opened her box last. Her charm was a crescent moon wrapped in stars, and her engraving read, "Your quiet is powerful." She held it between her fingers for a long time, then reached for Camille first, then Grant. She didn't say anything, but she didn't have to. After the gifts, Camille handed them each a clue for the scavenger hunt, written in rhyme and hidden in places like behind the laundry basket or under the piano bench. Talia shrieked with every new discovery. Esme took notes in case they needed to replicate it next year, and June collected each clue like it was part of a story she was already writing in her mind. The final clue led them to the backyard where balloons danced in the breeze and a picnic table was set up with sandwiches, lemonade, and a cake shaped like a book. It was Camille's idea. She said it was a symbol, a new chapter, a story they all wrote together. Neighbors came, a few teachers, Leah carrying a stack of rainbow-colored notebooks and a soft grin. Even the school librarian, who had a soft spot for June and brought her a vintage copy of a rare children's poem collection. The girls laughed, played, and showed off their necklaces to anyone who asked. At one point, Esme stood on a chair and made a toast with her lemonade cup raised high. "To everyone who helped us be found," she said, "to family that stays, and to dragons who do their best." Later that evening, after everyone had gone home and the balloons had begun to deflate, the house was filled with the soft buzz of tired contentment. The girls were in pajamas stretched across the living room floor, watching an animated movie they had seen at least 5 times. Camille sat on the couch with a blanket over her legs and a cup of tea in her hands. Grant walked in from the kitchen and handed her a small envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "Just something I've been working on," he said, sitting beside her. She opened it slowly. Inside was a printed email. Her name in the header. Her words from all those years ago. The ones she thought had vanished. "You found it?" she whispered. Leah tracked down the deleted server backups. The original message. The one they erased. Camille's eyes filled with tears. "Proof and closure," he said, "for what they tried to take from you. From us." She folded the paper and set it on the table. What are you going to do with it? Nothing, he said. Not unless we need it. I just wanted you to know your voice was never truly lost. Camille looked at him for a long moment, then leaned her head on his shoulder. I don't need revenge, she said. Not anymore. I just want to keep moving forward. Together, he said. Always, she replied. He wrapped an arm around her and they sat there for a while, the glow of the movie flickering across the floor, the sound of the girls giggling in the background. When bedtime came, they did the routine together. Toothbrushes, night lights. One story read aloud, one made up on the spot. 3 hugs, 3 whispered goodnights. And then the hallway quieted again. Grant stood in the doorway of his room and looked around. There was a framed drawing on the wall now, one of June's, the crooked house with the 5 of them standing outside and the stars above. He walked over to the nightstand and opened the drawer. Inside was a 4th necklace, identical to the others but with a charm shaped like a compass. The engraving read always, no matter what. He didn't know who it was for. Maybe one day someone would need it. Maybe one day it would remind him again who he had become. Or maybe it was just there to prove he was ready to stay, ready to keep choosing this life. Every day. He closed the drawer and turned off the light. Outside, the moon hung low over the rooftops, casting a silver path across the quiet street. And inside the house, with the wonky roof and the magic fridge list and the girls who never stopped asking questions, a family rested. Whole, chosen, and finally home. Thank you for walking this journey with us. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments. And if you believe in stories where truth rises, where love returns even after silence, and where family finds its way back, subscribe to our channel and tap the bell. Your next emotional journey is only 1 click away. Tap the video on your screen now. We promise it is one you will not forget. Thanks for being here. See you in the next story.